If you like to talk about combat sports and you want to join the discussion, click the subscribe button below and the bell notification icon next to it and join Knucklehead Nation.
What have you been up to, man?
Give me a second. This thing is supposed to be live right now, but it's tripping out on me.
Kind of weird. I can't see you, man.
Yeah, I don't know why it does that. Ladies and gentlemen of Knucklehead Nation, we are live with David Arvelo. I'll be able to figure my camera out at some point, David. But what's going on, brother? How are you, man?
I'm good, bro. I'm good. How are you doing out there?
I'm doing good, out here in California. Just, on lockdown. Can't get my favorite, burritos and tacos that I'm used to. Can't hit up Lee's right now.
That's a shame, man.
Some of the spots are still open, but what are you doing to pass the time, sort of, in this crazy pandemic, brother?
Lately I've been going through a lot of books and just working on some different projects here at home. Just kind of working on some other things, just because this coronavirus stuff is shut down the majority of all combat sports and just professional sports in general. I mean, it's just kind of crazy stuff. Nothing's ever done this before. Yeah. You're talking about world wars and other crazy economic events, disease, disasters, all these other things, and sports keep going, and then this stuff just stops everything in its tracks.
It's pretty crazy, man. And let me give a quick introduction. Just for the people watching that may not know, David Arvelo is a manager of several fighters, working with Suckerpunch Entertainment, a organization that's been managing fighters for quite a long time. I mean, you've got a ton of experience in that, and you guys have a ton of fighters in the UFC right now. Is that right? And in other leagues as well?
Yeah, we've got a ton of athletes in the UFC, and also in Bellator, PFL, ONE FC, just all of your major promotions worldwide, and then we've got plenty of people fighting for all other promotions outside of that too. But right before stuff started to get closed down, we got to see our girl Weili Zhang put on one of the best fights ever, just against Joanna Jędrzejczyk, and that was, if there had to be a send-off into this stuff, I guess that wasn't a bad one.
Yeah, man, she is a beast, dude. She is a beast. That's. I'm glad you bring that up. Before I get into that, though, I do want to discuss that fight with you real quick. But sure. Before I get into that, I mean, how many people are you representing right now in the UFC, just so people can know how much of a fucking big timer David Arvelo really is?
Yeah, so right now we have dozens of athletes in the UFC alone, but and that's great, right? I mean, we've got Weili Zhang, women's strawweight champion, and got a lot of other high level fighters in the UFC. A lot of guys making their way up the ranks, and ditto for Bellator. I mean, we've got Bellator welterweight champion Douglas Lima, longtime title holder in that division there. Recently got his belt back, winning $1 million tournament for Bellator. Got plenty of guys in the PFL. It's hopefully they're able to kind of figure out what they're going to do scheduling wise soon. But I'm really excited for, among other things, a guy who I've worked with, him and his coach for a while now, Brandon Sales. He's a heavyweight signed to the PFL. Him and his coach, Dirk McComas, down at, in Columbus, Georgia, where he's stationed. They're good guys. And, Brandon Sales, I've met plenty of big dudes, and this guy is probably one of the biggest human beings I've ever met in my life. He looked huge sitting down when I was walking up to him and his coach. And then when he stood up and turned around to shake my hand and stuff, I was just like, geez, man, I don't have small hands by any means, but he made me feel like a child when he shook my hand.
How big is this guy?
Brandon Sales, I think he's like probably 6'5", somewhere around there. And I mean, he makes heavyweight no problem, but he's a massive Hawaiian dude. He's cutting down usually from north of 300. and as big as he moves like he's a lightweight. It's really crazy. He's a former basketball player, believe it or not. Um, but moves like just a big cat or something like that. But just a massive human being, really skilled everywhere. It's crazy. But yeah, so we've got we've got a lot of athletes performing at a high level in all of your major promotions worldwide, and just a ton of good prospects coming up. All over the country and all over the world too.
That's that new generation of heavyweight, man. We've been seeing that in boxing too. Guys like Fury at 6'9" and
Yeah.
Wilder at 6'7", and I do feel like at some point that's gonna kind of trickle its way into the UFC too, with guys 6'5" that can move, beating the shit out of everybody. You know?
Yeah, well, I mean, you're starting to see, it used to be, kind of the meta. It's like that's like a gaming term, but just like the prevailing trends for heavyweight, guys sometimes just weren't quite as big, but you're starting to now see a lot of guys, coming from, very solid pedigrees, in other sports coming into fighting at heavyweight. So, you're getting guys who are very decorated football players, even like a guy like Greg Hardy, who's in the UFC right now, massive dude, but agile, fast, can do things that a lot of other heavyweights just wouldn't even attempt to do. You're starting to get a lot of these, talented football players and basketball players and guys coming from other sports, that previously they might have been doing something else, but now they're able to come into fighting. And so the level of heavyweight that's coming in nowadays is just really really going up and stuff. I mean, as much as I love the old school stuff, like Tank Abbott back in the day was one of the original dudes, and I was just like, man, this stuff is amazing, right? Like, so I just grew up, a huge boxing fan first, and you didn't really get too many guys like Tank Abbott, in boxing. Like Butterbean was maybe the closest, but even then he was very different. Um, but man, it's real hard for cats like Tank Abbott to get in now at heavyweight and have success, like with the kind of guys that are coming in now.
And we've gotten a bit of a taste of that with Francis Ngannou being such a monster of a man, and even Stipe is a pretty big guy,
Yeah.
also coming from a baseball background, and we saw
Yep.
we saw what he did with a smaller guy in Cormier, who I probably at any other weight, just smashes everybody. But man, these heavyweights are way too big now. I wanted to go back real quick, circle back before I forget that Wei Li Zhang
Hmm.
versus Joanna on Jacek fight, David. My goodness, man. A really entertaining fight, a really exciting fight. I did a video about that fight on this channel.
Hmm.
And the opinion I expressed, though, on that fight, and, I'm sure a lot of people disagreed with me, but I also had a lot of people agree with me. I felt like Zhang just I don't know. I felt like Jane beat the shit out of her, man, for the majority of that fight, and I almost felt like around the fourth round, she was probably taking a lot of punishment, Joanna, that is, and I didn't see the need to continue this thing all the way through. But I'm sure a lot of people will disagree with me on that. What were your thoughts on that fight?
I mean, first off, that was a great fight just in general. I mean, that's one of the gnarliest, UFC fights, really ever. Not just for female, fighters. Just I'm talking about just period. I think that Joanna's face did come away, pretty damaged from that fight. I mean, it got pretty crazy. For a while early on, actually, it was looking like Wheelay's face, was getting a little bit of swelling and stuff like that. But thankfully, it wasn't too crazy, and the cut man that she had was able to get that down, and then it just really wasn't a problem throughout, most of the rest of the fight. But Joanna did take a lot of damage. There's no arguing that. I think that ultimately she was still firing back. I mean, it's she took a lot of damage. She wore that damage on her face pretty, visibly. But at the same time, she was never out of the fight. I mean, that was a dog fight till the very end. So yes, there's a lot of damage. It didn't, cosmetically, it didn't look good. but at the same time, that was just a gangster fight till the very end. And, you know, I'm totally good with them not stopping it as long as, you know, both parties are still in the fight and, you know, still able to compete with each other, you know?
I think gangster is the proper adjective for that fight. Definitely
Yeah.
go, definitely up there. What else do you got going on right now, David? Now that everything's kind of, hit the shitter, nobody's doing anything. What are you doing? I'm sure you're still representing these fighters in some capacity, or maybe getting them ready for something coming up in the future.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you know, at first, unfortunately, I kind of figured things were going to go the way they did. I remember I was at you know, one of my favorite local spots with my wife getting some wings and stuff when I saw live uh, Mark Cuban's reaction to the NBA suspending operations. They were showing the Dallas Mavericks game at the time. You know, then originally they were going to finish the next game that they had scheduled for that night. Then they just shut it all down, and I just was like, man, stuff's going to start. You know, people are going to use that as a precedent at that point, whether it's, you know, whether it was truly bad in certain places or not. Once you have, you know, a league of you know, that caliber suspending operations like that, I mean, I just knew you're going to start to see kind of everything else fall in line with that. And you know, then, you know, that started happening. We had, you know, some of our people, you know, fighting in different places. You know, we had several of our clients getting ready to fight on a Global Legion show, you know, down in Miami. Um, one of my guys, Ryder Newman, was, you know, already had flown there. You know, he's based in Las Vegas, training out of Extreme Couture. You know, he's out in Miami, and it's the day before weigh-ins, and you know, the show got canceled because the city of Miami, the wonderful place where you're from,
Yeah,
you know,
baby.
they pulled all event permits. If you were a permitted event in the city, you weren't anymore. They just, you know, all public events, you know, anything that was permitted, and then they started clamping down on just other stuff too. You know, bars and clubs and stuff. You know, in the coming week or two after that. Um, but you know, so had to, you know, get Ryder in his corner home and, you know, start dealing with that. And you know, once the stuff started kind of falling in line like that, just show after show starts falling off. Um, you know, I kind of just, you know, had to talk to a lot of our people, you know, because people are hitting us up, you know, just, hey, what do you think? You know, I'm fighting next month. What do you think about that? And you know, it's like I'm a very optimistic guy under normal circumstances, but you know, people in different parts of the country, they don't have to deal with, you know, the effects of states of emergencies on fights as often, right? So, you know, out here on the East Coast, you know, you might have a state of emergency for something like, you know, hurricanes, or you know, you have a really bad winter storm, a blizzard. It's just, you know, the roads are, you know, just piled full of snow and ice. People can't get around. It's unsafe to be on the roads for a while. You know, you have states of emergencies to deal with that. But in most states in the country, when you have a state of emergency declared, all non-essential government agencies shut down. So it's pretty much, you know, you've got state police, um, you know, any, you know, department that helps handle any, you know, health or, you know, natural disaster emergencies, you know, your Department of Transportation for the state, you know, stuff like that, right? All your other government agencies are going to shut down. So I just told, you know, our people, I'm like, hey, like, you know, you got states declaring states of emergencies just like dominoes at this point. You know, while that happens in most places, not all, but most, like 90+% of all states in the country, you have a state of emergency, your commission is grounded. No commission equals no sanctioning, which no show at that point. You know, your commission's not going to be present, even if the venue would let you do it. So, unfortunately, I knew at that point, even in early March, that, you know, March, April, you know, May stuff just, you know, started getting canceled, pushed back. Um, you know, I know the UFC is fighting tooth and nail right now to be able to, you know, start getting off the ground again, just because the consequences of, you know, missing out on, you know, even 6 to 7, 8 weeks for them is huge, right? Um, but you know, the regional scene is going to take longer, you know.
Yeah.
So, you know, I just, you know, talked to a lot of our people and just let them know realistically what was coming. You know, if you had a fight scheduled in the spring and there's a pretty overwhelming chance that that fight would not be occurring anymore. So just kind of taking our people through that. A lot of promotions either had to cancel their events entirely or just push them back until later into the summer. Some promotions just have preemptively just said, hey, we're looking at the fall at this point, which is a smart thing to do, honestly. I talked about that with someone else last night on Fight Bananas and stuff, just to kind of explain how that shakes out for regional promotions. But yeah, I mean, that's, that I was up to, that for a while, just kind of dealing with the fallout from all that and just, event after event and fight after fight falling off. And, again, it's like, I'm a glass half full kind of guy always, right? Like, I can see some optimism in pretty bleak situations, but at the same time with something like this, like I just kept it real with our people. And I was just like, hey man, depending on, where you're at trajectory wise, record wise, everything like that, you could be looking at anything from a couple month layoff to potentially a 4 or 5 to maybe even 6 month layoff, just depending on where you are, what kind of state, the local economy is, where you're at, local promotions, businesses. There's a lot of unintended and consequences that people don't think of when you have something like this. You have different companies shutting down and people getting furloughed and all these other things. And that affects promotions in so many ways that people don't think of. So just kind of taking our people through that. And then, it's like I've talked with some people, everyone's, tentatively trying to reschedule events, but it's just hard to tell. You hear so much, oh, things are going to open it back up soon. And then other people are saying, oh man, we might not be able to have an event till mid to late summer, depending. We'll just have to see. Not every, most promotions don't have the ability to do what the UFC can. Logistically, financially, doing a closed show, the UFC can make that work. They'll take a hit, but it's a palatable hit for them. Ditto for Bellator, with them being a Viacom property and stuff, they can have access to different television studios, and if they have to do closed set events, they can do that. Ditto for PFL, but for them, they have to work around not just the closed set, issue, but then also how do you make that jive with your tournament schedule with the amount of time that you could potentially miss out on. So, they can do that. Most of your other promotions where ticket sales are a very significant part of your revenue that you need to take in for every event, that's no fans is either a huge blow to a non-starter.
Right, right. And, they're even talking about out here in California that we might not even be allowed to have events where big crowds gather until 2021, my man. It's crazy.
I'm I'm not laughing because that's funny, because that is absolutely not funny at all. I'm just laughing. I'm not going to say anything politically, but draw your own conclusions.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you haven't already, hit the subscribe button below and the bell notification icon. Subscribe and join Knucklehead Nation. Anything you donate to the channel or purchase in the links below gets reinvested right back into FightersRep promotions and into helping us build up the channel. I'm here, as you can see on the screen, with David Arvelo. That's his Instagram handle, at David_Arvelo. Give him a follow. One of the most powerful fight managers in the game.
You give me a lot of credit there, my man. I appreciate it.
An unassuming man that, I feel like can be really terrifying if you get on his bad side. David, that's a fantastic beard you're sporting today, by the way, my man.
It's getting there, man. It's getting there. I'm not quite where I was in many years past and stuff, but it's getting solid and stuff. But I've been growing my hair out for a long time. I just decided that uh, good or bad, I'm giving growing long hair one more good go. So I'm just gonna get I'm rocking the slick back look now, and just gonna keep that going until I get my long hair going and just get the whole Samson thing going on, man.
Looking good, brother. I wanted to ask you, man. You came out to California I feel like it was 2 years ago now,
Yeah.
to come check out some fights
Yep.
at Fighters Rep too, man. We had a great time having you out here scouting talent.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
When's the next time you think you're gonna come out here and come check out what I believe to be, and you might disagree, the mecca of combat sports, brother?
I mean, dude, when's your next show? Because that's when I'm coming. I mean, I've got the good old coronavirus. Left me sitting with pretty healthy chunk of Delta Airlines flight credit just due to it canceling plans I had to go over to the UK and into Canada and get my game on and stuff this May and June. Those events got canceled already. So whenever you're doing your next show, I'm there, my man.
Man, I was aiming for May 29th, Fighters Rep 10. Davey boy, we had so much momentum after Fighters Rep 9. I was so hyped about Fighters Rep 10. And then, I guess some people decided to eat bats or whatever, create some kind of nasty concoction in a laboratory. I mean, who the hell knows what really went down here
Yeah.
to kind of, kill the fight game. But I'll tell you, I'm definitely not feeling sitting at home all day long, bro.
Yeah, I'm not either. I mean, maybe some people have a different relationship with what they do, so they're enjoying the, time where, maybe their, job isn't really that crazy. But, for me, it's like, man, I love what I do. So I wake up every day and, I get after it and, that goes on, and I'm booking fights and dealing with clients and just doing all that other stuff, all day, every day until I go to sleep. Also in the morning, you know what I mean? Like I love it. So it's like the first couple weeks of this stuff were, just really strange, just waking up at my normal time in the morning, my alarm goes off and, some Sade's playing on my phone and stuff. And it's like I look at my phone and there's hardly any messages, no, hardly any emails. Like it's just weird to wake up and just be like, all right, well, my normal day to day for years and years at this point now doesn't exist. It's just kind of it's a very strange feeling, but I'm hoping that the UFC once they can get going again and ditto for Bellator and stuff, that'll start things back up a bit, and really it's just I look forward to when things can open back up in most places and, guys can, get to competing again,
One of my favorite things about you, David, is the fact that you're so comfortable and reeking in testosterone and in your own manhood that you're able to tell us about, listening to Sade, and you've always got your what is it, your romantic apocalypse going. Your what is
Yeah,
it that
my slow jam playlist that's like well over 1,000 songs long at this point is called Slow Jam Apocalypse. I've been
you
building
need.
that thing up since like the beginning of my freshman year in college.
Well, I mean, I haven't received a copy of the Slow Jam Apocalypse.
You better have a big jump drive, son.
Besides booking guys fights and managing them, through their careers in the combat sports, what else are you doing in combat sports?
It's funny you asked that because I'm wearing a Cowboy Fight Series T-shirt right here, but I'm the director of fight operations, or as I like to say, El Jefe of fight operations for Cowboy Fight Series. We're working on that. We've been working on that for the past year and some change now, promoting both MMA events and really what I truly enjoy is the Muay Thai events too, which we do that under Cowboy Fight Night. I just, as much as, MMA is a huge part of my day to day, and I love that. Like, uh, you know, running and matching the fights, for pure Muay Thai shows. I mean, man, that's just like, I love what I do, but like the Muay Thai aspect of it is just like a nice treat on top of everything else. Like, I love the shows. I love the fact out your way that you're doing pure striking. There
Yeah,
aren't
man.
really a ton of good opportunities for guys in that stuff in a lot of different places in the country. So, I've been working on that. Got some, I was looking at, getting some different promotional stuff kind of going on, here in this region and stuff, starting in 2020. But we'll just have to see, how that goes. Just because we'll have to, see when we're allowed to do events again, and you're gonna have to give the economy and just kind of everything else, a little bit of time to, get back to normal. But just working on that and stuff. Contemplating, going back to, school and stuff this upcoming fall. I know you and I have talked about it a lot, but law school is next on the menu for me. So, getting going with that and just, looking at some different things,
I like it. I like it. Maybe we can, join legal minds and forces and one day, form some sort of representation organization. Probably be hard for me since I'll want to keep promoting, but who knows? Who knows how we'll be involved. David, what kind of got you into the whole combat sports thing, man?
Well, I always loved it. I mainly, liked, coming up, I really just loved boxing. Everyone that I talked to and, people in my family and stuff, a lot of my friends, I just grew up a huge boxing fan and stuff, grew up around that. And, some of that stuff on the promotional side too, kind of working shows. And, then, as I got older, kind of towards the end of when I was in high school at Fort Union Military Academy, like you started to see, the UFC on TV a little bit. That was like the 05, 06 academic year. So you started to see a little bit there, some of the early, like Chuck Liddell fights, Ken Shamrock back when he was still, in the UFC and some of that. And then it just kind of grew from there in college, worked, walked into my first gym, first MMA gym anyway, in college. It was this place called The Lab in Fredericksburg, Virginia, where I was going to school, and started training there, kind of went from there, got involved in, stuff on the promotional side of things, and was doing that for a while. And, then, coming up on, the fall when I was getting ready to get married and stuff, Scott Howard and Brian Hamper from Suckerpunch Entertainment had hit me up and, asked me if, I wanted to come on board and start working with some guys, and,
and
things all kind of went from there.
And made the smartest decision of their professional career in bringing in David Arvelo.
Yeah, I'm basically, I'm a Swiss Army knife. I can help you with a lot of different things.
You sure can, and you can hurt me with a lot of different things too, Davey boy. I wanted to ask you, man, why so much love for Muay Thai?
Man, I've always loved Muay Thai and stuff. I've been in Thailand several times. It's just, if I was ever gonna not live in the U.S., that's where I'm going. You know what I mean? 100%. Beautiful country, wonderful people, phenomenal culture, delicious food, stupendous cost of living. It's just a great place. But I've always loved Muay Thai and stuff just because I think the rule set is great. It takes a lot of the stuff that, I really loved when I first got into MMA, but it's just, not that I don't like, grappling and jiu-jitsu and stuff. I've done that for a long time as well, and I enjoy everything. But, like, man, just pure Muay Thai to me is just probably the most entertaining, fight rule set for me. Just watching, Muay Thai fights and stuff. My wife was extremely thrilled about it, but we did our honeymoon for a while in Phuket, Thailand and stuff, and multiple times a week I was dragging her to fights at different stadiums because there's, fights on every day of the week at all the different stadiums there. So it's just, we were going to fights like night after night.
And she loved it or what? She loved it or what?
Well, actually, she fell asleep most of the time we went. It's getting front row ringside VIP seats is a steal there and stuff. So that's where I always was. And, sometimes you get a leather, love seat. Sometimes you get nice, real padded chairs, leather chairs, just, good seats and stuff. And I was enjoying it. I can watch that stuff every night. I can watch fights every night. I do for the most part. And then, she fell asleep, and so I had my fun, and she, but she was there.
Yeah, yeah. David, why do you like Muay Thai so much if IKF Unified Rules Kickboxing is so much better?
I don't get me wrong. That's an awesome rule set. I think it definitely, encourages action, and it's fast paced, pure striking, and I love that too. But for me, one of my favorite things about Muay Thai just is the clinch striking. So seeing guys, battle it out. That's one of the favorite things that I like to train if I'm sparring. I'm not the tallest. I'm not the shortest dude. I mean, I'm 6 feet tall, but for a lot of bigger dudes, I tend to be a little bit shorter, even for, guys who aren't as big as I am, weight wise. But, you know, you get a guy in the clinch and stuff, all of a sudden, the reach isn't quite as much of a factor anymore, So, I've just always loved it. And I love the clinch as a part of Muay Thai. It's really one of my favorite things about it. So, I prefer a full, Muay Thai rule set, but the rule set you're using out there is really great too.
I understand it and I appreciate it very much. So,
Minus the headgear. Minus the headgear.
for sure. Well, you know how we roll. We got to do it for the Ammies until they hit 3 fights. But who knows what happens if that changes? If the commissions go under, who knows what the hell's going to happen with this virus? I wanted to also ask you. Besides MMA guys, I mean, are you representing any strikers, any Muay Thai fighters, or kickboxers, or boxers?
We do work with some pure striking fighters in terms of mainly like Muay Thai and stuff. We've had some of our people fight on promotions like Lion Fight and One FC and striking bouts and stuff. Like one of our clients, Yorina Bars. She's probably one of, if not the best, female kickboxer, Muay Thai fighter on the planet right now, especially around her weight. But I mean, she's up until most recently, which that decision was pretty bad. She was just undefeated for years and years and years. I mean, she soundly beat, Chris Cyborg in a Muay Thai fight years ago. When Chris Cyborg was kind of in between promotions, they fought in Lion Fight, and Yorina beat her very soundly.
I do
So
remember that.
we do represent some pure strikers as well as just all the MMA fighters that we work with.
I do remember that, man. She did beat up Cyborg, and I remember thinking to myself, "There's nobody that can beat Cyborg at that time," and
Well,
really
in
impressed.
MMA there wasn't, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah. What did you think about Amanda Nunez? Since we're on the topic of Cyborg, basically like lighting Cyborg up like that, man, putting her away, man.
Amanda Nunez is a gangster. I think I don't think a lot of people saw that coming, just because it's like for the longest time in MMA, regardless of promotion, it's just Cyborg's just had almost like it was like she just had a run where it was just like Mike Tyson esque in terms of just like she's fighting quality opposition, they're getting in there, but it almost just felt like kind of those old school movies where someone's tied up on the train tracks and the train is coming and you're just like watching it happen. It was just that's kind of what it was like. I mean, just brutal stoppages, just going out there and just demolishing the best girls she could get her hands on for years. And I mean that was a wild fight. I mean it wasn't very long, but Amanda Nunez just put a stamp on it. I mean, that's she demolished Ronda Rousey. She beat Cyborg in the way she did. I mean, it's pretty tough to make an argument for anyone else
Right.
not being the female goat at that point.
For sure. And how do you feel about the term "goat"?
I mean, it's applicable, I guess. I mean, it's just it works. It's but if you're gonna have that, that's Amanda Nunez, 100%.
Yeah, I don't like the term "quote" just because it sounds corny, but no,
Yeah, I just say female, goat.
yeah, no, I definitely agree. Though I think she's the best, and I think we agreed on that. I think we both thought Amanda was going to win that fight. I mean, I know I thought Amanda was going to win
Yeah,
that fight. I know you're a big Cyborg fan, but I think you even thought Amanda was going to win that fight. Am I right?
yeah, I did. I mean, I just, the way Amanda's been looking like the past couple of years. I mean, she's just been kind of wrecking almost everyone. I mean, she's been fighting just nothing but super tough girls, and I mean, she's just been dominant, for a long, long time, and it's showing no signs of slowing either.
Yeah, yeah.
You
Who
know,
is it? Who is it that you really like right now? Who are some people you like to watch?
I really enjoy watching our girl Wheelay and stuff. I mean, she's just going in there and just kind of at a lighter weight classes and stuff. I mean, she's put a hurting on a couple of girls so far that are notoriously really really tough. I mean, like her fight against Jessica Aguilar. I mean, like Jag is super tough. Very experienced. You know what I mean? And um, that fight that she had with her was just. I mean, as I said it before, but I mean, it was one of the most like condensed but like brutal beatings. In the UFC in a while, in terms of like it wasn't just that the stoppage, it didn't come like later in the fight and it came earlier. It was just like there was a lot of damage done in that time. Um, I really enjoy, watching her. Our guy Paul Felder is always entertaining. He's just coming off, incredible fight versus Dan Hooker. Always really enjoyed watching Mike Perry fight. I've paid attention and been a fan of his since the guy was on the regional scene. Like that dude's dynamite. You know what I mean? It's he might say some crazy stuff. He doesn't really care about what anyone thinks about what he says or
Right,
does. I mean,
right.
he's just gonna do what he does, and I like that. But man, I mean, the guy can talk. Um, yeah, I remember like the dance off that he had with like the other cowboy, Cowboy
Yeah,
Oliveira, when
yeah,
he
yeah.
fought him at the UFC last April. I mean, he's in the ring, he's extremely entertaining. Um, and might get a lot of hate for this and stuff, but I've always enjoyed watching Connor fight. I mean, some of the antics and stuff, might be a little over the top at times, but I mean, it's part of what makes him great, and it's a big reason why he's kind of gotten to where he has. But I just really enjoy watching his fights too. Win or lose, it's always just very interesting. Like you're paying attention when he
I
fights.
I couldn't agree more. That's a
Yeah,
great selection. I also, I wanted to get your thoughts. I also love watching Justin Gaethje, man.
yeah,
What do you
yeah.
think? What do you think between him and Tony if it goes down?
Well, I mean, that's a great fight. I mean, even back when he was in World Series of Fighting, I mean, he was just wrecking guys. Finishing guys with leg kicks, just brutal beatings. Um, and he's done very well for himself in the UFC now too. I mean, just the guy's well rounded, really really dangerous striker. It's like there aren't many guys that can really really slow guys down and stop them dependably with leg kicks and stuff. But he's one of them. He's got I believe multiple stoppages with leg kicks, and I always enjoy watching stuff like that too. But like, man, it's tough to not go with Ferguson. It's like it's just his career has kind of been um, impacted by just injuries and fight cancellations at the last minute and just freaky circumstances. He like really like seriously injured himself at a photo shoot on like fight week before, like just
Yeah,
crazy,
yeah.
terrible Murphy's Law stuff. Like I don't know if he like ran over a black cat or just did something else to kind of get his vibes all wrong. But you know, his career's been marred by a lot of that stuff. But it's like, man, like that dude's super dangerous everywhere. You know, great
Yeah.
striking. I mean, it's like his team in California. I mean, he trains with 10th Planet, and then he's like I believe he's still there. I mean, you could probably correct me if I'm wrong, but he's been with like Knuckleheads the whole time too, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's, he's probably the biggest name at his gym. I don't think
Oh yeah,
it's
that's
a
not a
huge
question.
thing there,
Uh, and I think back in the day, used to, in the UFC, used to have like Chris Beal and maybe another guy out of there too. But it's he's dangerous on the feet, but he's got great wrestling. He's got phenomenal jiu-jitsu. If you put him on his back, you've still got a ton of problems. And that's
Yeah.
his bottom game is great. He's also one of these guys that can absolutely stop a fight with elbows from the bottom. Like
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
no as far as like you're kind of like yin and yang of like, okay, like if I take the fight here, I have this advantage in this particular area. Like where does anyone have that with him? That's just really tough. I mean, you're just basically in a total dogfight anywhere the fight goes. And he's just like I've said it before. It's like his kung fu is strong. It's just he's got so much unorthodox, technique and just other stuff that he can do that's just crazy. So it's I'm really excited by that fight. I think Ferguson wins, but that's still a phenomenal matchup regardless.
Yeah, Gaethje's a wrecking machine, man. I mean, I can even see Gaethje winning that fight, only
Oh, so can
because,
I. I mean,
yeah,
yeah.
only because I've noticed Tony get hurt in a bunch of fights, and I just feel like a guy as strong and with the tenacity of Gaethje, and with he's versatile too. I mean, he comes from a wrestling base, and nobody really takes him down. And
Yeah.
I think they're scared to take him down because he can, he probably has that good wrestling base. So they just stand with him, and I don't know. I don't know if Tony can hang with him on the feet. I mean, it's something I'd be really interested to watch. You
Yeah.
mentioned Whaley, and of course you represent her. Something that I don't really get a lot of is her popularity in China. I mean, how big is she in China? Do you know anything about that?
Yeah. So, you know, uh, one of the two managing partners of Sucker Punch Entertainment, the two of those are, Brian Butler and, Brian Hamper. They're the guys who brought me on, years ago. Butler's been over to China, several times, either for her fights or, for other reasons, when she's got different things going on. And, the metrics for her are just insane. Like it's just not even comparable to anything else. Chinese social media is a little bit different. Certain sites and certain apps are either heavily censored or just not available. It's like they have different apps like like Weibo and WeChat and a lot of this other stuff. But after she won the title, um, there were like and this is just I think within the first like couple days, like within like 24 hours and change or something like that, there were hundreds of millions of individual hashtags, mentions, tags, just everything else, throughout Chinese social media. I mean, it's one of the biggest markets in the world, if not the biggest market in the world, for commercially, content, social media, just even with them having censored, internet and social media and stuff, it's crazy. But as popular as even a guy like Conor McGregor is, or some of the other top stars in the UFC are, here in America, or just North America in general, even worldwide, like it's just not even comparable. Like it's insane. Like the metrics, for her fights and buy rates and stuff and just everything else. It's off the chain. It's really just staggering when you look at the numbers compared to some of these other and I mean she trends very well here and everywhere else too. I mean she's very likable. Even stuff leading up to her last fight, Joanna was you know talking a lot, and Wile's always very nice, very professional, very respectful. She's like a consummate true martial artist and every aspect of her life, right? Like that's just not an act. That's not
Yeah.
something that she's trying to do. Like that's how she lives her life and that's how she thinks. Like she doesn't look at certain fights as, oh yeah, well I like this fight because of this, or money or this and that. Like for her it's just like, okay, well I can go test my skills against this other person's skills, and the platform or the money involved or everything else is like not really even remotely like a primary concern. Like that's actually her life. And, but, even at the, press conference, face off and stuff, Joanna was, in her face, talking some trash and stuff. And, again, Wheelay's really nice. She's very likable. Like it's impossible not to like her. And, she just eventually told Joanna to just shut up, because she's learning English now. And, it was
That was
hilarious.
awesome.
Like everyone
That
in
was
that room was
awesome.
dying laughing, that got shared all over social media. People loved it. I mean, I think, with the way things are going, um, if she continues to do what she's been doing, she's just worldwide will end up being by far like the biggest fighter in the sport when you factor in what, her fan base and support in the Chinese market, and just Asia at large, plus the rest of the world. She's, I think, just going to be absolutely huge.
Is there some sort of like pay-per-view platform in China where you guys can gauge her sales?
Yeah, so they have different places where pay per view is available and stuff through kind of your main like social media and different like media apps. But I would like to say, and again, it's just I don't have any of these numbers in front of me and stuff. But I mean, you're talking about from what I believe anyway, like it well into the seven figures in buy rates in
That's insane.
China.
That's
I'm like
insane.
not talking about anywhere in the rest of the world, and certain other places in the world, a UFC that might be on pay-per-view here in the US or North America, different places there, with whatever kind of media rights, deals that the UFC has for their content in different places, sometimes it might be a pay-per-view, or there might be, a subscription service plus a paywall for the pay-per-view. And then in other places, they're just being paid in bulk. And so then, it's just broadcast on TV on certain sports channels. People have access to those, or they're at a bar or just something else. So, it varies around the world. But, I mean, when you have buy rates like that in that market alone, plus, which their price point is different too, it's significantly lower than it is, here in America. But regardless, I mean, it's just the metrics for that are just off the charts, really, compared to anything going on here.
Where is she right now,
She's
considering this
since
pandemic?
a lot of this stuff started kicking off. She's stayed here, and she and her team are still in Vegas. Um, because it became apparent that as the coronavirus stuff started, kind of advancing more and started, it was getting very bad, in China before it really got to the point it is, here in the U.S. They have quarantines if you're coming back in. So she would have had to have been in a public quarantine in just a huge kind of just gymnasium warehouse like building with thousands and thousands of other people. And she would have had to have been in a public quarantine for at least 2 or more weeks
Yeah.
as soon as she got back into the country. And,
So,
her and her team didn't want to do that. So they've stayed in Vegas, and her, and her coaches are, staying there and, getting some training in and just kind of laying low until the stuff dies down.
so she's probably hanging out at the. Is the PI open? She's probably at the PI right now, getting even more jacked than she already is.
I'm as far as the PI goes. I mean, I know they've been pretty sparing with letting people use that, but we also have a great relationship with Extreme Couture, and you know, um, they it's gyms are pretty much closed right now. Crowds of people aren't allowed to be in, but different places will kind of allow for maybe potentially even a few people to be in places at a time. So whenever she's been in Vegas, she's been allowed to train in either the PI or Extreme Couture.
Has she come out to visit you in the VA?
It's funny that you say that. So there was actually talk initially of her and her team wanting to maybe get out of Vegas and come here. And I had told I had told one of my bosses, Brian Butler, I was just like, hey man, if they want to drive out to Virginia, like, listen, I've got a solid beard. My slow jam playlist is on point. I start every day listening to Sade. Like, I'm not worried about catching the coronavirus. So, I would fly. I was willing to just like, hey, they don't have to make that drive across the country, if they don't want to. Like, if I have caffeine and I've got slow jams, I can drive pretty much indefinitely. So I was actually down to fly out to Vegas one way, rent a vehicle, and then drive them back here to Virginia over. It says 2.5 to 3 days, but I could do it in two, no problem. And drive them here for them to kind of ride things out here for the duration of this stuff. But they ended up just opting to stay in Vegas, and the UFC has been super gracious about helping out with her and her team, and making sure that they're being taken care of very well out there. So that's just what they've been doing. But that was actually something that was discussed, was her and her team potentially coming out here to good old Richmond, Virginia.
That's pretty dope, my man. You mentioned the UFC being really courteous, so we got to talk about the UFC real quick, my man. What do you think of Dana, man? Trying to get an event off right now. I mean, the guy's a machine, man.
Yeah. People are going to have varying opinions on this, right? Everyone kind of processes this stuff differently. People have different opinions on, what they think, should be done as far as, allowing guys to, get publicly congregating, people being close together. I'm not a doctor. I'm not an epidemiologist. I'm not any of this stuff. History and psych major here. But I think that at the end of the day, if these guys are getting multiple tests, that are administered by a doctor, if the UFC is willing to set that up for these guys, and people are going, both the fighters and their cornermen are going to go through comprehensive testing. Ditto for any of the people who are going to be present at the event, officials, UFC production staff, and they're going to do a closed, circuit of a closed set event, and just, broadcast it out from whether it's their Apex or whether it's, a casino or other type of venue somewhere, whether it's, the, Mortal Kombat-esque, island setup that they're, talking about having, or, just whatever else is the case. If there's no negative, tests from any of the people being involved, it's like you have to look at kind of the parity between different things, right? Like, okay, so you're saying that there's no sporting events, but last time I checked, the parking lots and inside of stores of, Walmarts, hardware stores, grocery stores,
Right.
packed full of people. I was there today. I got some really good masks recently in the mail. It was really hard to just get anything around here, so I ordered some from a great company based out in LA, where you're at, actually, Black Craft Cult. They make a lot of really cool different merch and gear. But I got some cool masks from there, so I wore that out and bumped some slow jams and stuff throughout the day, so my vibes are on point to just keep the virus away. And but it's like you have people in all these places, right? And who knows what people's health situation is? Are people getting tested? At the end of the day, if everyone present at these events are getting tested, whether you want to get into the whole essential argument or not, right? What's the difference between if you have potentially, let's see, fighters plus a couple cornermen, so that's let's just say if they have 3 each, that's 8 fighters, like, let's just say in that building you have 30 something to 40 people, maybe even a little more, but I would like to think it would probably be around that number or under. I think even the commission, in any of these places, if they're going to do that event with that setup, they're going to be running on, a skeleton crew at that point. They have only the referees they need, only the judges they need, only the inspectors that are needed, no extra staffing. You don't need a bunch of extra staffing because you're running a closed set event. I mean, these guys are coming right out the locker room. There's no crowd. There's, no other distractions. So, you can kind of run a smaller crew in terms of officials. And then you have production staff and stuff, but that's not, too crazy.
Especially if they do it at the Apex.
Yeah, for real, because that place is already fully set up for them. So, if you have 30 to maybe in the low 40s of people present in this building, how is that different from your local Publix, or grocery store, hardware store, whatever? In terms of the amount of people in a building, it's actually a lot less. Again, it's like I'm not in charge of making public policy. I don't have the answers for people, in terms of, health risks or complications or anything else. By my understanding, there's been a lot of talk about, the officials and up to and including even the referees are going to be wearing, PPE, and the only people not wearing, masks are going to be the fighters, just because that would be a little bit bizarre and also just pointless because, those things are going to get, ripped off pretty early into a fight, especially if you start grappling or, just have a couple exchanges where people are making contact with each other. But if everyone else, for the most part, is wearing, personal protective equipment too, I mean, I think it's just tough that, like, why is it okay to have, one situation where you have, double or triple the amount of people, in sometimes a similar sized building, with no PPE and no testing, none of that in place. I mean, it's like the UFC and some of your big organizations actually have, the funding and the infrastructure to even do a closed set event and go through all this stuff to kind of, keep their people separate, from the general public, and, multiple rounds of testing and all this stuff.
I don't
It's
know. I feel like you're getting a little too logical right now.
Yeah, there's that. I mean, logic is tough sometimes nowadays for people, but I think that he's doing the right thing, and a lot of people also don't understand it. And this is like, I'm not talking about any of this stuff that has anything to do with, me or our company's, revenue or anything else. At the end of the day, like, if you're doing this stuff for the right reasons, like, your first concern is to always look out for your people, right? But, any business, big or small, economies, whatever, right? You have a month and a half, 2+ months of, a colossal drop in revenue, 60, 70, 80+% drop in revenue. That's devastating no matter who you are, big or small. No company is too big to fail. No sporting league is too big to fail. You're talking about companies, regardless of what type of business it is, whether it's the UFC or anyone else, CEOs and executives, bosses, when they have the right priorities in mind, it's not just the health of the business from a financial standpoint. Like, the UFC, really looks after a lot of the people that work for them. You know what I mean? Like, it's like they've got, no one's been laid off at the UFC yet. That's not something, he publicly stated, like, we are not laying anyone off, and that's something that's been happening to millions and millions of Americans so far. So it's like, I just wonder sometimes, like, what do people think that, a guy in Dana White's position is going to be doing, if not trying to find a way to press forward?
Right.
Like the whole just like sit and wait for however long until, this whole thing is completely gone. There are a lot of businesses, including the businesses of anyone who's being overly critical of this, whether they be, fans who work in different industries, or, media members, or whatever the case may be, right? Like, and I'm not saying that those opinions aren't valid and that they don't bring up great points, because sometimes they have, but no business, like I said, can withstand months and months or 6 months plus, or just, if you told every single sporting league, that, hey, you are shut down completely until 2021.
Ouch.
That, I mean, like, the consequences of that are, like, really just too terrible to behold, right? So, I think that ultimately it's Dana White's just doing the right thing in order to try to find a way to, effectively and safely press forward with his business. Just like, an owner of any other business is going to do the same thing. It's like with dealing with a virus like this, I think there's a lot of other issues that you need to take, into account. And put different safeguards and measures in place. You don't have an audience. You're going through testing. You're doing all these different things, to make sure that, layer after layer after layer of safety checks are in place. That's really the best thing he can do. And I know that, all of your other major sporting leagues are also exploring what possibilities they might potentially have, to at least, even if they aren't allowed to have fans in the stands, have their, sports resume. Just like any other business who's dealing with at least a temporary shutdown is trying to figure out a way that they can get moving again.
Are you just not that worried about it because your beard makes you immune to pathogens?
Yeah, people share these asinine articles on mainly my Facebook page sometimes about you get some person on some website writing that beards are dirty or just all this other stuff. It's like, listen, my beard is well groomed, well cleaned, luxurious every day, and I'm just a lot of these things have gone around over the years and stuff like that, and my beard and the strength of my library of slow jams and Sade stuff has always kept me fine. So as far as that's concerned, I'm good, man. When this stuff first started to kick off, I called my grandparents who live an hour and change south of me, and I just told them, I'm like, hey, both of them are in their late 80s, and I was like, hey, I want you guys to be safe and healthy, and if you need groceries, you need anything else, stay home. I will happily go and get them for you. You're an hour and change south of me if I was driving the speed limit, which, isn't as much of a thing. But I just told them to stay home, stay, in the house. I'll bring you whatever you need. And, my grandpa's a, career Navy vet and stuff, so he always stays pretty, prepared supplies-wise and stuff, so they're good. But, I'm not personally that worried about it. I know it's affected a lot of people, and I think that you see a lot of these kind of articles going around on Facebook, and they're talking about different remedies, and all that stuff always pops up when you deal with something like this. But I would say that the world in general, while we deal with this virus, is definitely in need of more Sade in everyone's life.
Well, I couldn't agree more with that. Ladies and gentlemen, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, the bell notification icon below. Join Knucklehead Nation. Give us a follow on social media at FightersRep. Do the same to David Arvelo. That's his Instagram handle right there on the screen, at David_Arvelo. David, we've had you on the line for over an hour, brother. I really appreciate your time, as usual. Again, one of the most powerful men in the management game and fighting. I'm not even messing around when I say that. Is there anyone you want to shout out or anything you want to say before I let you go, David?
Well, I mean, actually, man, I kind of wanted to, give you a shout out. Actually, it's just I was thinking about it. When you were kind of talking about the timeline of things for me and stuff earlier, I actually met you the weekend after I got married, because my wife is a trooper and she's very tolerant of this stuff, kind of just seeping into a ton of my life and personal time and stuff. And we didn't have our honeymoon scheduled until the next month anyway. But I met you out at you were announcing at another promotion, decently soon after you had moved to California, and it's just cool to see where you've taken things from. From you being announcing to starting your own shows. And it's like, man, I love the fact that it's like you and I have argued about this in the past, and about California being like the mecca for MMA and combat sports and stuff. And I had kind of debated with you about that in the past, and it's not for the reason that people might think. Like, it has nothing to do with the talent pool or the gyms or something. I mean, there's just a litany of like extremely great gyms out there with just tons and tons of talent. I mean, Southern California is just unbelievably loaded, with talent, up to and including. I mean, there's guys who've just been fighting killers, their whole pro careers out there. You could have a guy who's maybe has a 500 record out in Southern California, but he can go to plenty of other parts in the country and
Be a star.
very well, dust off,
Yeah, yeah.
a guy with a, sexy looking record in a different part of the country. So you have that, but previously, it had kind of been more about like, kind of the lack of promotions at some points, and just like, lack of a lot of good regional opportunities for guys coming up. I just think, regulations and costs associated with, both sanctioning and just events in general, it had kind of, been hamstringing the pro scene there for a little bit. But I mean, since I've met you, though, I mean, things have exploded there. But it's really cool to see you really getting into just the pure striking, which is a very underserved market, which in a place like that is crazy when you consider like the talent pool and all the teams and, great fighters and coaches that you have access to just easily right in your area. And I think it's really cool that you're, aren't you the only like licensed kickboxing
Pretty
promoter
much.
at the pro level in the whole state?
Pretty much, yeah, man.
Yeah, that's cool.
And I didn't even realize it. I was talking to Bam Bam Still, also a legend in his own right, a former kickboxer, was 17-0 with 15 knockouts, co-founder of the IKF, and he's also a CSAC referee. I mean, you'll see him refereeing boxing matches like, he did Better Biev's last fight before he fought Teddy Atlas's guy. And I mean, he's refereed MMA, he referees kickboxing. And Dan was like, I was like, Dan, like, are there any other kickboxing promotions? Like, I was just looking around, because I know there are a couple promotions that might mix in unified rules kickboxing, but they're amateur promotions. And even if there is one that does exclusively unified rules kickboxing, it's usually an amateur promotion. But he told me, yeah, George, like, you're the only one. And I was like, holy shit, so it does kind of go back to, the debilitating costs of running a fight promotion out here that you just, that you touched on.
Yeah.
But it also, it's also about like people wanting to do it, being passionate enough to do it. There have been some people that started promotions out here, but I think their heart was in the wrong place. Maybe they're looking for money or something else. Just didn't, it didn't materialize for them.
Yeah, I think, out there, I mean, it's just, and this is something that's going to affect California too. Not even talking about, your state government's, projections of not allowing, more public events and stuff until potentially next year. I was talking to, people and, like I said, I'm always an optimistic guy. You know what I mean? Like I always try to see the good in just about any situation and stuff. You have kind of, bad things happening, even with this coronavirus stuff, and just dozens and dozens and dozens of fights being wiped off the board. And all, like I kind of laugh and I just keep it moving. Right. But, I'm also just big on kind of keeping it real with people, whether it's good news or stuff that they don't want to hear. And, the economic consequences of this for promotions, especially at the regional level, where you kind of have like an inverse revenue model compared to the UFC or Bellator, where the majority of their revenue is coming from media rights fees and endorsements, and then ticket sales are a smaller part of it. For regional promotions, ticket sales are the main part. And
Yeah.
for some promotions, a lack of ticket sales is just an instant non-starter. I think for most regional promotions, that's honestly the case. For some people, if they're in a certain broadcasting situation and maybe there's some enhanced support, that can, kind of come into play, taking into account the fact that there's, no audiences allowed for a while, maybe you can kind of make that work. But, if you're talking about no audiences, that's going to take a lot of promotions just off the table entirely until that changes, right? And then, the economic impacts of this stuff are something that people aren't really thinking of in terms of its effect on combat sports, in that, a lot of fans and fighters, coaches, everybody, maybe they've been working at a place where they got laid off. Maybe their business is closed because it couldn't weather, 2+, 3+ months or more of not being able to function and earn the majority of the revenue like they normally would. if someone's coming off of basically having their personal finances devastated by this stuff, they're not going to be as able to go and spend a couple $100 or 800, $1,000 on some VIP table stuff or anything else like they normally would, right? So that's going to come down. Sponsorships, from businesses potentially are going to be affected because most of these businesses, out here, regardless of what industry they're in, there's a huge constriction with the economy. Most businesses have been dealing with a huge drop in revenue, right? So maybe they're not in the same place to, spend as much in advertising and marketing and event sponsorship as they can. And, there's a lot of other unintended, consequences from, social distancing and, kind of shutting a lot of things down that, really going to set the regional scene back. It's like, I heard some people say early on in this stuff, oh, well, as soon as they open it up, like the first person that does a show, they can make a killing. And I'm like, theoretically, that's possible. I mean, sometimes you roll dice and you get two sixes and it's great. You know what I'm saying? But um, realistically, there's a lot of factors that come into play that are really going to work against promotions for a while. So, I mean, I spent all of yesterday talking to a lot of different promotions all over North America and overseas too. And, most longtime promoters, now yourself included, aren't going to willingly put themselves in a situation to where they're looking at a 60 to 70 to 80 plus decrease in revenue, percentage wise, and still be stoked about doing a show. Because at that point, you're looking pretty heavily into the red for most folks. So, it's just really a shame what this stuff has done because it's like, the couple promotions at the highest level can kind of mitigate that, whereas the majority of the rest of the sport is kind of going to be left in a bad position. And I mean, it's going to affect so much. I mean, a lot of your bigger promotions now are going to be, close to 2 months or 2 months plus behind on, fighting people on their roster. Like you're going to have a huge backlog of people that are behind on fights contractually. So they're going to have to start cranking that stuff out, probably put, an extra, 1, 2, 3 fights on some of these cards. So that's one thing. And then the other unintended consequence of that too is I think you're going to start to see people potentially get cut sooner sooner than they might have before this stuff kicked off. And that's going to affect a lot of new signees too. A lot of, anything short notice in the UFC or another larger promotion, that's going to happen when they can't fill a certain fight vacancy with someone already on the roster.
A huge problem I see is the gyms, man, especially out here.
Yeah, that too. I mean, we didn't even get there yet. Some of these guys haven't been able to really train. In some places, local governments and law enforcement are being a little bit more, hawk-like in terms of looking at that stuff and walking into gyms when there's 3 people training in there really far away and still telling everyone to get out or get fined or arrested. I mean, some of these guys haven't been able to train. I mean, you have people training for high-level fights right now or at least tentatively scheduled high-level fights right now, and they're training with their spouse.
Right, and not just that. I mean, I'm seeing it. Obviously, as a promoter, I'm dealing with a lot of these gym owners. It's where I'm getting my fighters from.
Yep.
And these gyms are not 24-hour fitness or these massive established global or domestic companies. They're mom and pops. They're mom and pops at the end of the day. These gyms, they as big as they can be, these fight gyms, even something like American Top Team, even something like Black House, it's an individual business typically. If there is, more than one gym or one location, it's probably just a handful, and somebody who just, kind of bought the rights to put the name of that gym on their gym. So, for me, that's what I worry about, especially out here in California. Because I know that some of these gyms are not established enough to weather this kind of storm. And I'm wondering what's going to happen to the talent pool. Besides the fact, like you said, that they're not going to be training, the fact that they're not going to have anywhere to train. Because I'm telling you, man, a lot of these gyms are struggling.
Yeah, I mean, it's, with gyms and memberships and stuff. I mean, I know you've said it, I've said it. Um, you know, uh, if people are able to, if they're still working, they're still getting paid, and they haven't, been put out of work by this stuff. Man, like, pay your gym membership so you have a gym to go back to. That's kind of the other issue. And every gym owner that I've talked to, a lot of our clients, coaches, I mean, even my coach Rick McCoy at MMA Institute here in Richmond, he said the same thing. He's had about um, I think maybe right around maybe 10%, freeze, or in memberships, or people just having to drop off because they got laid off. And for most coaches, like, that's perfectly understandable. I mean, if you all of a sudden, if this stuff puts you out of work, and you can't pay your rent, your mortgage, your bills, much less anything else, like, on a human level, it's perfectly understandable, and every coach is gonna get it. But some gyms are affected a lot more than that. And again, no gym, no business in general can handle, a sudden drop off of 30, 40, 50 plus percent in revenue, or even more, over the course of just months and months and months. Just most businesses, gyms included, just can't sustain that. So, yeah, I mean, it's really worrying, in a lot of places. And I mean, especially in Southern California, a place where I'm sure it is not cheap to run a gym in the first place, just with, rents and property values, and, just everything else that goes into that. When you have a huge drop off like that, I mean, that's your margin
Yeah,
just falling off a cliff. So it's tough. I really hope that, stuff can get cleared up with this, and they find a way that's, safe for kind of things to open back up again publicly for the most part. And things can gradually kind of, work towards getting back to normal, or at least as normal as things can be, until this thing kind of, is able to dissipate, and there's better treatment, and possible, vaccine options and stuff. But yeah, I mean, it's crazy. I mean, it's the consequences of this stuff go far beyond just having to have, like, a temporary cessation in fights. Um, like, there's going to be very
yeah,
real and lasting consequences, and unfortunately, just like any other business, like, we're probably going to see some gyms just not be able to recover from this, which is just terrible.
yeah, and especially when you consider the amount it costs to run a gym out here in California, where the prices of properties are just it's outrageous out here,
Yeah,
how inflated it is. And
yeah,
if it wasn't for family reasons, and I guess because I am in this talent rich region, I would not be here. um Another thing I wanted to bring up, Davy boy, was the fact that despite the fact that a lot of gyms are going to be hurting, a lot of businesses are going to be hurting, there's going to be a huge void at the end of it.
yeah.
And, tremendous opportunity as well. I mean, I guess that's the silver lining after the storm, right?
Hmm.
So, I'm thinking to myself, I don't have to constantly put on a show because I'm not like a four walls business like a gym is. So I can kind of ride out this hiatus as I make money from, my day job, my other endeavors. But that's, I guess, the good thing about not relying on this 100% is that I definitely see myself having no problem at all
Hmm.
riding through this, and there being huge opportunity at the end of this. So I mean, for the people that do stick it out, I think it could be kind of a last man standing sort of situation. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think across the board it's going to be like that. I mean, I think gym wise, it will unfortunately be that way. And that always really sucks, because you don't ever want to see any gym, go out of business and stuff. I mean, it's like all these gyms, started, aside from any money that's derived, I mean, it started just out of, like, genuine, kind of, love and respect for the sport, and just kind of wanting to perpetuate it. It's a labor of love before it's, a lucrative business. So, you don't ever really want to see that, but I think unfortunately you're going to have that on the gym side. You're going to have that on the promotional side of things because some people's, promotions are also just kind of tied to their personal finances. And, this stuff is just going to wreck some people financially, unfortunately. And, so you're going to have a drop off in terms of promotions and stuff too. I mean, there's always opportunity to fill voids when you see a lot of, I guess what you could say is competition fall off potentially. There isn't going to be as much market saturation, in those different sectors for gyms or promotions or other stuff. So, I think that there will be opportunity there, unfortunately, off of, at the expense of other people just kind of not being able to handle that kind of attrition. So you're right there. It's just, again, like another consequence that I think most people just haven't really put a lot of thought into yet as far as to what this stuff can do.
David Arvelo, ladies and gentlemen, anything else you want to say, brother? Any shout outs?
Not too much, man. I'm just looking forward to when this stuff kind of all, comes, to a close and, the public can open back up. And, I couldn't, enjoy a live show, but I watched a live stream of a good, metal show earlier, before I talked to you, while I, enjoyed some good barbecue and some Shiner Bock beer, watched some good, doom metal and stuff from this band called Toke. That was pretty cool. But I look forward to being able to check out some live shows, and especially once promotions start going again, and be a Cowboy Fight Series rolling again. I'm definitely looking forward to that. That's a lot of people don't know, but that's actually a pre-fight week ritual that I have, is either the weekend before or during the actual week of any fight event that I've ran for years and years and years and years. I always catch a metal show.
I plan on being a part of this experience at some point.
That'll be great. If I come out there for your show, and I'm sure, in a market like LA, I'll be able to find some good stuff. We can check some of that out. And, I know you're a big dude who can, put down a solid amount of beers with me and stuff. So that'll be fun. You won't be able to enjoy maybe the full spectrum of the experience that I'll be enjoying, especially in a state like California where, certain forms of vegetables are legal there that aren't legal in other places. I'm looking forward to that. So I don't have to watch live music on a web stream anymore. But just looking forward to getting out there and checking out your next show too, man. It's, even the event that I came out for, man, there were just some dog fights. It's like the talent pool out in Southern California is crazy. And, man, even the talent pool with officials is nuts. I mean, you guys have a ton of great referees. You got Chris Lieben out there, doing his thing now. Frank Trigg, very good official. Jason Herzog.
Do you know Lieben commentated one of our fights?
Yeah, that's dope. I remember I was at your show, and I remember watching him on TV when I was in college, right? And then I look over and he's judging your fights. Yeah, I'm just like, that's fucking cool. Sorry, I didn't know if I can curse or not, but
yeah, you can curse.
It's but yeah, I mean, dude, and I mean, one of, if not the best, Herb Dean, I believe, is out. I think he's California or Arizona, one of the two.
He definitely comes out here.
Yeah, and then what, in my opinion, probably the best referee in the game, Mike Beltran, keeping it real for all of us discerning gentlemen rocking serious facial hair. Mike Beltran, best ref in the game. Just you got him out there too. Maybe he'll ref one of your next shows coming up.
Definitely could happen. We are, a CSAC sanctioned promotion now as well as IKF, so it could happen.
But yeah, not just when all this is over and the esteemed governor of California decides that it's okay for you to have a show again. I'm definitely looking forward to getting out there and hanging out with you. And I don't care that I'm a guest and I'm coming out there to check stuff out. Like, I mean, as you know, like, you're my boy, so I'm out there helping set up chairs and everything else, and enjoy the great fights you put on, and watch some great knockouts and other stuff like I did the last time I was out there. And I know you'll keep me well fed during my time out in Southern California too. So it's always good.
Our favorite part.
Yeah.
David, man, I appreciate your time. You are my boy, in case people don't know, so they better recognize. That's why I know, he's one of the most dangerous, powerful, scary individuals in the fight game. And it's a pleasure knowing you, my man. I appreciate your time. And, we're going to log off now. Almost an hour and 30 minutes, man. Me and you, every time we have a conversation, this happens.
Yeah, man, this is like light work compared to some of the conversations we've had in the past. So anytime, man, you know that.
For sure. We'll bring you on soon. Ladies and gentlemen, David Arvelo. We will see you guys again. For those that tuned in tomorrow, we're going to try to get another special guest on the show. I'm hitting up a few different people, but we'll bring David Arvelo back again as it's to check up on him. And if you want to follow him, give him a follow at David_Arvelo at Instagram. All right, Knuckleheads. We'll see you guys tomorrow. Keep it clean. Davey boy, keep it clean, brother.
You too, big dog.